The Masai Mara baked under a sun that seemed to melt the very air. 42 degrees Celsius, a temperature so brutal it forced even the most dedicated field researchers into the sparse shade of their canvas tents. The midday light shimmered off the dust-choked earth, distorting the horizon into a watery mirage. Silence, heavy and oppressive, had settled over the conservation camp, broken only by the distant buzz of insects and the hum of a generator struggling against the heat. Inside her small, air-conditioned lab tent, Dr. Anya Sharma was a study in focused determination. Beads of perspiration dotted her forehead, but her hand remained steady as she cataloged another blood sample. Her work, meticulous and critical, demanded her full attention, even as the stifling heat outside threatened to lull the world into torpor. She analyzed, measured, and recorded a rhythmic routine that anchored her in the wild expanse. Suddenly, a sharp electronic chirping shattered the quiet. The camp's perimeter motion sensors, usually triggered by curious impalas or a passing warthog, had activated. The alarm's insistent pulse indicated movement, not along the fence line, but directly towards their location. Anya frowned, her mind racing through possibilities. Most large predators avoided human encampments. Before she could process the data, Jomo Okello, one of their most experienced rangers, burst into the tent. His usually calm demeanor was shattered, his eyes wide with a startling blend of wonder and deep concern. "Dr. Sharma, you need to see this," he stammered, his voice hushed with disbelief. Anya snatched her binoculars from the workbench, her veterinary instincts immediately overriding her scientific detachment. She followed Jomo's outstretched arm. A lioness, a magnificent tawny shadow against the shimmering haze, was approaching. Her gait was slow, deliberate, each paw placed with an almost reverent care, and she was carrying something. Through the powerful lenses, Anya's breath caught in her throat. The lioness held a tiny, limp form gently in her jaws. A cub, no more than 3 months old. The mother's movements were not those of a predator with prey, but of a caregiver, impossibly delicate, almost fragile. The cub hung lifelessly, its small body swaying with each step. "She's carrying that cub like it injured," Anya murmured, her voice barely a whisper, her veterinary training instantly taking over. This isn't normal predator behavior, not even for a mother moving a healthy cub. A chill, colder than any air conditioning, snaked down her spine. This was wrong, profoundly, inexplicably wrong. 50 meters from the camp's fence line, the lioness came to a halt. With an almost heartbreaking tenderness, she lowered the motionless cub to the parched earth. Then she looked up, her amber eyes, piercing and intelligent, fixed on the camp. She glanced back at her cub, then again at the humans, a repeated silent appeal that transcended species, a raw, desperate plea for help. Dr. Elias Mbeki, the project lead, emerged from his tent, drawn by the commotion and Jomo's agitated calls. He raised his own binoculars, his initial skepticism quickly dissolving into stunned silence. "This is unprecedented," he whispered, his voice thick with awe. "Desperation beyond normal behavioral parameters." His scientific training, like Anya's, confirmed the extraordinary nature of the moment. "We have to help," Anya insisted, her voice tight with a rising sense of panic. Her mind was already racing, inventorying medical supplies, calculating dosages. "That cub is dying, and somehow this mother knows we might be its only chance." The raw agony of the situation was a physical ache in her chest. Elias turned to her, his face etched with a mix of apprehension and disbelief. "Anya, you can't be serious. Approaching a wild lioness with her cub violates every safety protocol. It's suicide." Anya didn't break her gaze from the lioness. She gestured towards the majestic creature. "Look at her. No aggression, no growl, no posturing. She brought her cub here for a reason. She's asking us." The camp was no longer just a scientific outpost. It was a stage for an impossible moral quagmire. The stark choice between established safety rules, painstakingly developed over decades to protect both humans and animals, and an undeniable emotional plea for help, hung heavy in the stifling air. Every eye was on the lioness, then on Anya, then on Elias. Anya watched the cub's chest, barely rising, falling. The breath grew shallower, more ragged. The clock, already ticking, threatened an irreversible loss. Hope, fragile and flickering, was fading with every labored gasp. The camp was a crucible of tension, the debate raging in hushed, urgent tones. Strict safety protocols etched into every researcher's mind for their own survival and the integrity of their work clashed violently with the unprecedented ethical and professional dilemma unfolding 50 meters away. Elias and Anya stood at the center of this storm, their gazes fixed on the silent appeal of the lioness. Jomo, his face etched with a wisdom passed down through generations, broke the scientific impasse. My grandfather told stories of lions seeking human help, he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of ancient Maasai traditions. They possess an intelligence beyond what science typically acknowledges. They remember kindness. His words hung in the air, a spiritual counterpoint to the logical arguments. Anya, her eyes glued to the struggling cub, saw its increasingly labored breathing, saw the last vestiges of life flickering. We need to make a decision quickly, she urged, her voice strained. Every minute we delay reduces the chances. We're running out of time. The words were not a plea, but a desperate statement of fact. Suddenly, Elias's radio crackled to life, pulling him away from the immediate crisis. Kenya Wildlife Service headquarters. The unusual situation had drawn unwanted attention, the urgent voices on the other end demanding answers about the breach of protocol. Anya could hear fragments of the conversation: breach of safety, public image. Unpredictable. The pressure was immense. The cub stopped moving, completely. Through her binoculars, Anya saw the tiny chest still. Unconsciousness, a wave of dread washed over her. We're losing it, she announced grimly, her voice barely a whisper. If we're going to act, it has to be now. The words were a line drawn in the sand. Elias, his jaw set, made the career-risking call. He looked at Jomo. Jomo, prepare the tranquilizer rifle as a precautionary measure. Anya, you'll have exactly 10 minutes. No more. He turned back to Anya, his eyes conveying the gravity of his decision. This goes against every protocol in the book, he added, his voice heavy. But sometimes the book doesn't account for miracles. Anya didn't hesitate. Her hands, though trembling slightly, moved with purposeful speed as she assembled her field kit. IV fluids, antibiotics, an array of examination equipment. Every tool she might need in this desperate race against time. The fear was a cold knot in her stomach, but compassion propelled her forward. With a deep breath, she stepped out from behind the fence, moving slowly, deliberately, towards the motionless cub. The massive lioness, her golden eyes locked on Anya, watched her every step. As Anya advanced, the lioness took several steps back, creating a wider circle of space around her cub. It wasn't retreat born of fear, but a deliberate act. Her body language incredibly conveyed permission, a silent, terrifying trust. Incredible, Jomo whispered into his headset, his voice laced with disbelief. She's actually giving the doctor room to work. I've never seen anything like this. His words confirmed the profound, almost mystical nature of the moment. Anya knelt beside the cub, the harsh sun beating down on her back. Her hands, despite their tremor, were gentle and swift. She began her initial assessment: severe dehydration, indicated by the sunken eyes and poor skin turgor. A burning fever, palpable even through her gloves. Pale gums, and most alarmingly, profound neurological impairment. The cub was unresponsive, limp. Possible poisoning or severe infection, Anya called back to Elias, but her brow furrowed. As she carefully examined the cub's tiny paw, a faint, unusual metallic sheen caught her eye on its fur. It was barely visible, a shimmering residue, a disturbing clue that defied immediate explanation. Without breaking rhythm, she discreetly collected a tiny sample, tucking it into a sterile vial within her kit. Temperature is critically high. Signs of neurological impairment, completely unresponsive, Anya reported, her voice steady despite the internal alarm bells. She initiated emergency assessment procedures, hooking up the IV, drawing blood, preparing for rapid antibiotic administration, all under the unblinking, watchful gaze of the lioness. The mother animal observed every movement intently, her massive head tilting. An almost human-like curiosity mingled with fierce protectiveness in her golden eyes. Anya's hands worked with practiced precision, deftly inserting the IV catheter into the cub's tiny vein. The challenge was immense, the stakes impossibly high. But then an astonishing thing happened. The massive lioness, instead of displaying alarm or aggression, moved closer. Her large head lowered, her intelligent eyes intently tracking Anya's every delicate movement, inspecting the procedure with what appeared to be a profound, almost analytical approval. "Jomo, are you seeing this?" Anya asked, her voice a hushed blend of wonder and disbelief. "She's not just tolerating my presence, she's actively observing the treatment. It's like she understands what I'm doing." The words felt absurd, yet the evidence was irrefutable. A silent, unshakable bridge of trust was forming. There was no time for full analysis. "If this is sepsis, we've got maybe 30 minutes before organ failure becomes irreversible," Anya stated, her voice taut with urgency. She swiftly administered broad-spectrum antibiotics and anti-inflammatory medication directly into the cube's bloodstream, hoping to arrest the rapid deterioration. The lioness, a silent, majestic sentinel, settled onto the ground. She lay down, her powerful body forming a protective semicircle around Anyamon and the cub, a living shield that offered security without interference. Her watchful gaze never wavered, a silent pact established under the harsh African sun. Over the radio, Elias's voice crackled, raw with awe. "This is absolutely unprecedented. The maternal trust being displayed here challenges fundamental assumptions about wild animal cognition." His scientific pragmatism was being pushed to its absolute limit by the emotional and behavioral anomaly before them. 20 agonizing minutes later, a flicker of hope. The cub, previously lifeless, stirred. A slight head movement, a weak, almost imperceptible attempt to lift his front paws. It was a minuscule gesture, yet it sent a jolt of triumph through Anya. "We're getting neurological response," Anya exclaimed, relief flooding her voice, threatening to break her professional composure. "The antibiotics are working, and his hydration levels are improving. Temperature is starting to drop." The words were a prayer answered, a whispered victory against impossible odds. The lioness sensed the shift instantly. Her previously flattened ears, signs of intense focus, subtly returned to their normal, relaxed position. And then, from deep within her massive chest, a soft, contented rumble emerged, a sound like a giant purr that vibrated through the very ground. Intuitive relief. As the brutal afternoon wore on, the cub's condition steadily stabilized under Anya's careful monitoring. His breathing grew regular, the terrifying fever subsided, and his awareness slowly returned. He was still weak, but the immediate threat to his life had receded. "Jomo, you need to see this," Anya called softly a while later. "The mother is actually grooming the injection sites. She's incorporating your medical intervention into her own caregiving behavior." It was an extraordinary display of integration, a mother's instinct seamlessly merging with human science. As evening approached, casting long, purple shadows across the Mara, the cub made his first wobbly attempt to stand. He swayed precariously for a moment, then settled back down beside his mother, who responded by grooming him with evident, almost palpable relief. "Vital signs are stable," Anya reported to Elias, her voice weary but triumphant as she began to pack up her equipment. "Infection appears to be under control. Neurological function is returning to normal." The little cub was going to live. During a quiet moment, away from prying eyes, Anya discreetly transferred the metallic residue she had found on the cub's fur into a sterile vial. A nagging feeling persisted, a prickle of unease, that this went beyond a simple infection. The source of his illness still felt off. This wasn't just a sick cub. There was something else at play, a shadow lurking beneath the surface of this miraculous recovery. She tucked the vial deep into her medical bag, a secret to be investigated later. Elias's voice, though still tinged with awe, had a new, serious edge. "We're in uncharted territory, Anya. This changes everything. How do you maintain veterinary care for a wild animal whose mother specifically sought human intervention? And what does this mean for our understanding of their world? This isn't just a rescued cub, it's a new paradigm." The harsh African night offered little respite. Anya spent the evening, hunched over her laptop, the glow illuminating her determined face, designing a revolutionary mobile treatment protocol. It was a delicate dance, balancing the imperative of medical necessity with the sacrosanct principle of wild animal autonomy. How could they offer continuous care without infringing on the lioness's natural instincts or habituating her dangerously? If she brought him here once, Anya theorized to Elias, sketching diagrams on a notepad, there's a chance she might understand that ongoing treatment is beneficial. She associated us with healing. It was a leap of faith built on an observation that defied conventional wisdom. Jomo reinforced her plan, his deep voice carrying the weight of generations. My people have observed that lions who survive interactions with humans often retain memory, not just fear, but also other things. This mother may have learned to associate our presence with healing. His insights added a profound cultural layer to their scientific understanding. The next morning, the air crackled with anticipation. Anya waited, her gaze fixed on the expanse of the Mara. Precisely at 10:30 a.m., a tawny shape materialized on the horizon. The lioness reappeared, and beside her, walking steadily, though with a noticeable wobble, was her cub. "She's back," Jomo whispered, a wide grin spreading across his face, his eyes shining with wonder. "And the cub is mobile. The treatment worked." It was a profound validation of their risky decision. The lioness approached with the same familiar caution, but no aggression. She allowed Anya to conduct the follow-up examination. The cub, miraculously, submitted with surprising docility, a tiny patient accepting his doctor's touch. "Infection markers are significantly reduced," Anya reported, her voice hushed with relief as she administered a second, smaller dose of antibiotics. "His neurological responses are completely normal." The relief was palpable, a collective sigh of the entire camp. The cub's alertness grew with each passing minute. He watched Anya with bright, intelligent eyes, a spark of playful curiosity returning. He even attempted to bat at her stethoscope, his mother supervising the interaction with what could only be described as approval. Then, on the third day, something truly unprecedented happened. The lioness arrived not just with her recovering cub, but with two other healthy cubs from her litter. They trotted behind her, wary but clearly under their mother's careful guidance. Anya stared, dumbfounded. "She's bringing her entire family for medical assessment," she realized, a gasp escaping her lips. "She's learned to recognize preventive health care." The sheer intelligence, the proactive understanding displayed by the wild animal was staggering. With Elias's stunned approval, Anya conducted basic health screenings on the wary but compliant healthy cubs. It was a surreal experience, lions willingly submitting to human examination. "All three cubs are now documented," Anya reported, her voice laced with awe. "We've become the primary healthcare providers for a wild lion family." While examining the new cubs, Anya couldn't shake the nagging feeling. This wasn't just a simple infection or common ailment. As she discreetly took microsamples of their fur, and even from the ground where they had rested, her eyes scanned for more of that subtle metallic residue. The initial poisoning or infection diagnosis felt incomplete, too simple. A deeper, more insidious, possibly man-made threat festered in her mind. She needed answers about that residue. Elias, watching the scene unfold, shook his head in wonder. "We're witnessing the birth of a new field," he murmured. "Collaborative veterinary care between humans and wild animal parents. This could change everything." But for Anya, a lingering question persisted. The cub's recovery was a miracle, but the anomaly of the metallic residue, coupled with the lioness's uncanny intelligence, started to unravel her initial hypothesis about the cub's illness. This wasn't just nature's way. This felt engineered, a hidden variable deliberately introduced into their world. If you've been following this incredible story, get ready, because the stakes just skyrocketed. The bond between Anya and this lioness has led to a shocking new development, but it's about to plunge them headfirst into a life-threatening conspiracy far bigger than anyone imagined. Like this video, share it with everyone you know, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next, because this is where things get truly terrifying. The trust between Anya and the lioness deepened, evolving into something both profound and inexplicable. The lioness, in a gesture that defied all known animal behavior, began bringing small gifts, unusual rocks, interesting bones, even a stray feather. leaving them near Anya's makeshift medical station each morning. Ritualistic behavior around medical interactions, Jomo observed, his voice filled with a quiet awe. This suggests complex emotional processing and social recognition we've never attributed to wild predators. It was a humbling, almost spiritual realization. The camp settled into a surreal daily rhythm. Morning medical checks for the cubs, followed by cautious afternoon play sessions under the watchful eyes of both the lioness and the researchers. The research station had, against all logic, become a satellite healthcare facility for a wild pride. The original cub, once near death, now thrived, displaying normal hunting play behavior, a vibrant testament to the successful intervention. Then, on the 8th morning, the delicate balance shattered. The lioness arrived, not with her usual calm vigilance, but in clear distress. She paced agitatedly, her tail lashing, her golden eyes scanning the eastern horizon repeatedly, a deep rumble rumbling in her chest. "Something's wrong," Jomo noted, his voice low, his hand instinctively going to the rifle slung across his back. "Her behavior is completely different. She keeps scanning the grasslands like she's watching for threats." His words were barely out when the chilling, whooping calls of a hyena clan echoed across the plains. Shadowy forms, a dozen strong, emerged from the acacia thickets, their low-slung bodies and powerful jaws marking them as a mortal threat to young cubs. Elias's voice was grim. "Hyenas target lion cubs. It's their primary prey for easy kills. A single mother would normally retreat, lead them away. But the lioness stood her ground, facing an impossible choice between the immediate safety of her cubs and their ongoing medical needs, which seemed to anchor her to the camp. What followed was even more astounding. Rather than fleeing, the lioness began a series of complex vocalizations directed not at the hyenas, but toward the research camp. These weren't standard lion calls, no aggressive roars, no warning growls, but a nuanced sequence of chuffs and low rumbles. "Those aren't standard lion communications," Jomo deciphered, his eyes wide with stunned realization. "She's trying to communicate something specific to us. She's asking for help." The lioness then positioned her cubs directly between herself and the safety of the research camp fence, creating a defensive formation, actively utilizing human presence as a protective barrier. She was not just asking for help, she was integrating them into her defense strategy. Anya didn't hesitate. She grabbed her medical kit, but instantly realized it wouldn't be enough. "Jomo, can we use the vehicle to create additional protection? Position it as a barrier." Elias, his face grim but determined, authorized it without a second thought, completely shattering any remaining safety protocols. Deploying their Land Rover as a mobile barrier, they were now actively participating in the predator dynamics of the Mara, a decision that would have monumental consequences. As Anya watched the hyena circle, their eyes glinting with an almost unnatural hunger, a chilling realization washed over her. They weren't just after any cubs. They seemed drawn to something specific, something connected to the cub's unique condition. The metallic residue samples, now sent for off-site analysis, flashed in her mind. A growing sense of a much larger, darker game was at play, one that stretched far beyond the boundaries of their small camp and into a terrifying man-made conspiracy. Words, 878, Part 66. Outline for this part, strictly follow these points only. Deterrence, the Land Rover successfully deters the hyenas, forcing them to retreat, though their departure is marked by an unnatural reluctance. The verdict. Weeks later, Anya receives the analysis report from her trusted off-grid contact. The metallic residue is a unique, synthetic nanoparticle, a biomarker designed for accelerated growth, but with severe neurological side effects. The horrifying realization. Genetically enhanced. It's a biomarker, Anya whispers, connecting the nanoparticles to the cub's initial devastating symptoms. Elias's fury. Elias and Jomo are stunned. Someone is experimenting with wildlife, or worse, contaminating it, Elias growls, his academic calm shattered. The lioness's true plea. They realize the lioness sought them not just for healing, but to expose something. Her trust was a calculated risk against a silent human threat. The corporate hand. Anya's contact reveals the nanoparticles are patented by Omnicorp Global, a biotech giant with controversial land holdings near the Mara. Cover-up confirmed. Corporate cover-up, Jomo states grimly. They're testing something, and these lions are the victims. The hyenas knew somehow these cubs were it's different. The threat multiplies. Their unprecedented research in the lion family's survival are now a direct threat to Omnicorp, who stand to lose everything if the truth gets out. The audit team, a mysterious KWS audit team, arrives unexpectedly, led by a stern, unnervingly polite woman, asking pointed questions about the unorthodox protocols. Hidden motives. Anya observes the audit team's intense interest in the cub's full recovery details, their questions straying far beyond protocol into the specifics of the cub's initial illness. The confrontation. Anya locks eyes with the lead auditor, a cold, calculating menace in her gaze, and realizes this isn't an audit. They're here to confiscate their data, silence their discovery, and bury the truth. The lioness's vigil. From a distant kopje, the lioness watches the camp, her golden eyes fixed on the new intruders, a silent, knowing guardian of the secret she entrusted to them. A new battlefront. Her remarkable intelligence, once a plea for life, is now a silent warning, a weapon against the human forces who wronged her kind. The conspiracy revealed. The team stands united, realizing they're not just conservationists, but whistleblowers caught in a dangerous corporate and governmental web, fighting to protect not just wildlife, but truth itself. The Land Rover, positioned strategically, roared its engine, its headlights glaring into the encroaching twilight. The sheer mass and noise were enough. The hyenas, though their eyes still glinted with an unnatural hunger, hesitated, then turned. They loped away into the darkness, but their departure was marked by an unnatural reluctance, a lingering predatory interest that sent shivers down Anya's spine. Weeks later, the answer arrived. Anya's trusted, off-grid contact, a brilliant but reclusive biochemist, sent the analysis report for the metallic residue. Anya's hands trembled as she opened the encrypted file. The residue was a unique, synthetic nanoparticle, a biomarker, designed for accelerated growth, but with severe neurological side effects. Genetically enhanced. It's a biomarker, Anya whispered, the horrifying realization clicking into place. The cub's initial devastating symptoms, the high fever, the neurological impairment, the near-fatal collapse, were now tragically explained. Elias and Jomo were stunned. Elias, usually the picture of academic calm, was visibly shaken. Someone is experimenting with wildlife, or worse, contaminating it, he growled, his voice laced with fury, and doing it right under our noses. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The lioness's unprecedented trust, her desperate plea for help, her bringing all her cubs for assessment. It wasn't just about healing. They realized the lioness sought them not just for medical intervention, but to expose something. Her trust was a calculated risk, a desperate gambit against a silent human threat she instinctively recognized. Anya's contact provided another chilling detail. The nanoparticles were patented by Omnicorp Global, a shadowy biotech giant with controversial land holdings dangerously close to the Mara. Corporate cover-up, Jomo stated grimly, his face set. They're testing something, and these lions are the victims. The hyenas knew somehow these cubs were different, genetically altered perhaps, a weaker, easier target. The implications were terrifying. Their unprecedented research, the survival of the lion family, their very existence in the Mara, was now a direct threat to Omnicorp. If the truth got out, Omnicorp stood to lose everything. Billions in investment, their reputation, perhaps even their freedom. The next morning, a sleek, unmarked Land Cruiser pulled into camp, a mysterious Kenya Wildlife Service audit team. Led by a stern, unnervingly polite woman, they began asking pointed questions about the unorthodox protocols adopted by the camp. Her smile was too wide, her eyes too cold. Anya observed the audit team's intense interest. Their questions strayed far beyond mere protocol, drilling into the specifics of the cub's initial illness, the exact nature of his recovery. the uniqueness of his condition. Their meticulous note-taking, their barely concealed eagerness for details, were too precise, too deliberate for a routine audit. Anya's gaze locked with the lead auditor. There was a cold, calculating menace in the woman's eyes, a predatory glint that chilled Anya to the bone. This wasn't an audit. They were here to confiscate their data, to silence their discovery, to bury the truth before it could ever see the light of day. From a distant kopya silhouetted against the rising sun, the lioness watched the camp. Her golden eyes were fixed on the new intruders, unblinking, a silent, knowing guardian of the secret she had entrusted to them. Her remarkable intelligence, once a plea for life, was now a silent warning, a weapon against the human forces who had wronged her kind. The team stood united, the weight of their discovery pressing down on them. They realized they were no longer just conservationists, but whistleblowers caught in a dangerous corporate and governmental web, fighting to protect not just wildlife, but truth itself. Their world had irrevocably changed. End words. 879 conclusion. The scorching 42-degree afternoon in the Masai Mara, which began as another routine observation for Dr. Anya Sharma, quickly spiraled into the most extraordinary case of her veterinary career. When the massive silhouette of a lioness approached, not with aggression, but with a dying cub, it challenged everything she understood about wild animal behavior. This unprecedented plea initially met with ethical dilemmas and broken protocols, forged an unthinkable bond. The lioness's unwavering trust led Anya to a chilling discovery, a synthetic nanoparticle, a biomarker linked to Omnicorp Global. What started as a desperate act of maternal love transformed into a silent, profound communication, a call not just for healing, but to expose a sinister truth. The lioness, a knowing guardian, had revealed a corporate conspiracy, making Anya and her team accidental whistleblowers. Now, facing shadowy KWS auditors and an encroaching threat to their data, they stood on the precipice of a new battle. Their fight was no longer merely for the survival of one cub, but for the truth itself, a battle initiated by a creature whose intelligence proved far beyond what humanity had ever dared to acknowledge. End words 109.